If you like to move it, then today's cards are for you. Did you know that you can make interactive cards without interactive dies? I'm going to use regular stamps and dies today to make my first 2 cards, and then I've got a really fun pop-up design to share with you using a purpose-made interactive die, plus a bonus card if you stick around. In preparation, I have done a stack of die cutting ready to go out of some 80-pound cardstock so that I can get straight into the first technique, which is a shaker card. I'm going to take a regular bauble die and make it into a shaker card. And I'm doing that by die cutting a circle first. I made sure that I chose one that was going to sit within the borders of the bauble. Then I can do a double die cut. So this just means that I'm die cutting a die cut piece, and I lined up the bauble over the circle that I'd already die cut. You can die cut both pieces at once if they are going to fit through the machine, but make sure that you use some low tack tape to hold them in place, because you don't want to ruin your dies if they shift accidentally. And next I used some liquid glue to attach an acetate bauble to create my window, and then I could add some foam tape around the edges. Now I've just used some really thin strips of foam tape to create the well for my shaker bits to sit in. Now there really is no limit to what you can create and make into a shaker card. It's a really great way to stretch the dies and supplies that you already have. If you've got a tree, why not die cut a triangle out of the center of it? Or you could even use a craft knife to take a triangle away, and then you could make that into a shaker well. Other things that are perfect are nesting dies. So if you have a set of nesting dies, if they're in the shape of a star, you can actually create shaker stars for your cards. Or if you've got a really cute little image with a belly, why not die cut a circle out of the belly and make that into a shaker well? The possibilities really are endless, and it's a great way to get a fun, unique look from the supplies that you already have. Right, so I have this Grinch arm. It's a die cut. I've just added some simple colouring with my Ohuhu markers, and I am going to add a little bit of dimension on my card, but of course you don't need to do this. So I can just layer up the pieces and pop them up onto a panel that I'm going to sit on my card front. Now I like to use a mixture of liquid glue, foam tape, and also glue tape, and it depends on the purpose that I'm using it for as to what I'm using, because I do not want my shaker to fall apart in the mail. So typically I know I'm going to get a really strong hold with liquid glue. So it does pay to think about what glue you're using, where and when. So the second idea that I have today, it's going to look like a very similar card. So a lot of the pieces are the same that I'm using again, but we're going to be creating a swing card. Well, the element's going to be swinging. Tilt, rock, I'm not sure what you call it. But I've worked out where I want my bauble to sit again. But this time I'm using a little small circle die. This is just out of another random pack of dies. A center of a flower would work well here. The only thing you need to be aware of is the size of it needs to be big enough for your foam dot to fit through and still have some movement. So I'm decorating another bauble here. I'm using the faux glitter cardstock. You might have heard me talk about this before. There's actually no glitter in this cardstock, yet it looks glittery. It's like one of my new favorite go-tos. And I think from memory, this is the Christmas color pack, which is very apt. Now the panel you will need to pop up so that you can get some movement with your swing mechanism. I've got a piece of cardstock, the design paper, and I've added some glue just to make sure that my glue dot, my foam dot, isn't going to come off. So even though my foam dot already has adhesive on it, I want it to hold stronger, so I've used some liquid glue here. And because I added that bigger piece of square, I did have to cut away some of the foam that I'd put to pop up the back panel of my card. So just make sure that there's some room for movement and no adhesive where that foam dot is. Now I've added a couple of enamel dots to help it slide when it swings on the card front. And then I can attach my bauble to the foam dot, and I'm covering that with another circle of cardstock that I've die cut out of some gold cardstock. I've put another one in front of that that is not glued down. This allows the mechanism at the back to swing because it's not actually glued to the hand of the Grinch. And I've got a quick bonus tip here. Did you know you can colour your rhinestones with alcohol markers to get the colour that you want? And I did replace the gold circle under the Grinch's hand because I didn't like the fact that I could see the hole through the panel of the cardstock. And that seemed to work well. So we're on to our final interactive idea now, and we're going to be using a purpose-built interactive die, and this is a fun one. It is a 3D pop-up box, but there's also some add-on dies that you can get to go with it. So there's grass, there's stitched waves, and there's also stitched hills. I'm going to be using a couple of these today, and you can mix and match them, obviously. So I did all of my die cutting in preparation, and the design paper that I'm using is very high quality. It's quite a heavy cardstock. I layered it onto the back base of the card, but it was too heavy to use with white cardstock for the front pieces. So when you do the die cutting, there are some score lines that come up on the pieces. Now I like to get a nice crisp edge by using a bone folder, but you can also burnish it with your fingernail if you prefer. Because I want to add layers to the back panel, I do need to cut these down to fit onto the panel. So I'm using my guide wire on my trimmer to do that. You can also use a pair of scissors. I'm adhering it with some liquid glue, which just gives me some time to move the design paper to make sure it's in the right spot. And I've also burnished the edges of the stitched hills. So I cut one of each size, and when you're layering these up, you start with the widest one first at the back. It's really easy to do. I'm using a very strong hold, like a tear tape. You can use liquid glue, you just need to be aware that you'll have to hold it in place until it sets. But if you've got a strong tape, this is going to make the process much quicker. So it goes from the widest to the most narrow of the 3 die cuts. And I've done these all in the design paper. I did not layer those onto white cardstock. Don't worry, we're going to go through this again. On the bonus card, I just could not stop at one. I had to actually make a second one. And I'm using the same pack of design paper again. But this time I'm going to decorate the sides as well. Now the cardstock that I've used on the base is a lighter weight. It's only an 80 pound. I find that the 110 pound is just too thick to get a nice fold. But I would recommend practicing with the paper that you're using and seeing what works for you. So I used the grass this time. I chose 3 different colors of design paper. I didn't have to double up the pieces, but obviously if you do have a really thin design paper, you would need to layer this onto some lightweight cardstock. How cool are these boxes? And they lay flat for postage too. I stamped a couple of the images and coloured them with my markers. I do like to restamp them to get a nice crisp edge after I finish colouring, and I'm really happy that these have got coordinating dies, because they are such large images and they're going to be standing on these cards, I actually want to double up the cardstock. So I've die cut a second shape and I'm adhering them together just to give it some stability. I am going to use my liquid glue to adhere it to whichever layer I choose of the card. You can use whichever one you want. One thing to be aware of is to know if you want the card to sit flat, not to add too many layers or dimension or bulk that's going to get in the road when you're trying to lay the card flat either way to fit into an envelope. So when I adhered the sentiment, I did it directly to the card base. So my bonus card here with another very clean and simple design, I came in and added some gold highlights onto the tree. I could have used a fairly flat sort of enamel dot. That probably would have worked well. I did think about adding some liquid glue and some tinsel, but I didn't really feel like picking up glitter for the next few weeks. And I did add a sentiment here. Instead of adding it to the back, I've actually added it to the front of the card because I know that's not going to get in the road when I lay it flat to mail it. Just some of those things that you need to consider when you're creating interactive designs. They are such fun cards. They're really fun to make. They're fun to receive. And altogether now, my first card was made using regular supplies. I made it interactive into a shaker card. My second card was also made with regular supplies and I made it into a swing, tilt, rocking card. And my next designs were made with purpose-built interactive dies to create a pop-up card. And these really make my heart happy. I love how bright and cheerful the design paper is. And the Grinch that's stealing the tree just cracks me up. But that's my bonus card. I couldn't not add him to a pop-up card. Let me know in the comments if you have a favorite card today. And if you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. What are you waiting for? It's totally free. I've got 2 more Christmas videos for you to enjoy. I look forward to seeing you at those. And until next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.